Hi guys, hope you're well. Looks like I'm back. Bit of a croaky throat, rusty, tired, nearly cut my finger off. We finally moved in, loads to do in the house, but we're happy to be here. Just want a quick catch up, see how you are, want to check my camera works, want to check the microphone works, want to check the light works. And I want to talk to you about Rolex. Now, I have owned 2 Rolex for 6 months. Not my first Rolex, I've owned other Rolexes before. Probably more prestigious, hard to get Rolexes. But I've landed with these 2 Rolexes. One's totally high-end luxury, or what most people would perceive to be that, and then the other one is, well, entry level is a bit of an oxymoron. £4,700 retail. I paid £6,500 for a entry level watch. That kind of money is not entry level, but when you come to Rolex, yes, it is entry level. So which is best? The Code grape dial that no fucker wanted to buy in the shops, or the luxurious, iconic Rolex Datejust 41 two-tone. So November 2022 marks the 6-month anniversary that I have owned 2 Rolex. I've specifically gone for a really jazzy one in the two-tone, and then a more muted, easy to wear, more under the radar watch in the Oyster Perpetual 39. Now these 2 watches have served me well. It's only been 6 months, fair enough, but ultimately I am torn between which is the best option on a daily basis. Granted, I bought them both to serve different purposes, but I do find myself leaning towards the Oyster Perpetual 39 on more occasions than most. And that wasn't my intention. The intention was to buy an all-singing, all-dancing, super expensive, high-value watch, and it cost me £10,350, the most expensive amount I've ever bought on a watch. If I'm honest, it's not quite worked out the way I thought it would be buying such an iconic, expensive watch. So I'm just going to go through a few points of which is better on different categories. And the first off is the bracelet. Now, ultimately, even before I start all the talking about these 2 watches, there are going to be people out there that have already made their mind up which is the best watch. People will not like the grape colour dial for starters. That is a massive no-no for a lot of people. Other people, two-tone gold, that's a big no-no, and they will stay well clear of it. And because of the default that they don't like on one particular watch, they will automatically lean towards the other. I personally really love the idea of gold, and I had done for a lot of years. Well, it's not quite just hit the mark the way I thought it would do. Don't get me wrong, in certain situations, special occasions, there's no better option than a two-tone Rolex watch. It looks amazing with a suit, a fancy gown, not a fancy gown, a fancy ball that you're going to or something like that. It really works well. The first category is the bracelet, and I've got to give it to the Oyster Perpetual 39. I think the all-brush stainless steel Rolex bracelet is the most iconic bracelet in the world. Absolutely killer bracelet. The Rolex, the new Oyster Perpetual 41s, so many variants out there, the Rolex Explorer. You can spot a Rolex steel brushed bracelet a million miles away, whereas something two-tone stands out, looks flashy, but it could be confused with completely different watches out there. So yeah, for me, the Oyster Perpetual 39, 1-0 because of the bracelet. It's just an iconic bracelet. Now the next one is looks. Totally subjective. Again, what you think is the best looking. But I've got to give it to the Datejust. I've got the Oyster Perpetual here. It's an absolutely stunning, beautiful watch. But if you've got them side by side and you're just valuing them on, symmetry, bezels, shiny bits. The shiny bits do look nice, although they're not a lot harder to maintain. So for me, yeah, the Datejust wins it on looks by a fair way, I've got to say. But looks isn't everything in this world. That's what my wife keeps telling me. So the prestige of buying one of these watches, owning one of these watches, again, I've got to give it to the Datejust. Ultimately, the Oyster Perpetual grape dial, people didn't like that watch. It's probably Rolex's most unpopular watch. I remember a time when you go in a Rolex AD and it was all they had. If you wanted a men's Rolex, that is all they had in the window, this grape dial. Nobody wanted it, nobody liked it. And it's almost the underdog, and I sort of pined for it in that way. I went to it Geneva before lockdown, and that was in the window, and I nearly bought it in Geneva, and I changed my mind, and then not long after that, it got discontinued. So I've always had a soft spot in my heart for that, but ultimately, especially in the watch community, that's more of an unpopular dog, and this is definitely, with it outside of the watch community, it's a hell of a watch. It's iconic, it's two-tone, it has luxury screaming all over it. So I think the prestige of owning both, it's definitely the Datejust that nips it in the bud. Just because, having said that, outside of the watch community, I was wearing the Oyster Perpetual and I was speaking to a non-watch guy, and he happened to clock my watch, and he went, "Oh, is that a Rolex?" So it doesn't matter if it's the entry-level watch that nobody wanted to buy at one point. He didn't recognise it as that. He recognised it as a Rolex. So in my head, I think this is better because it's more expensive and it's two-tone and it's a more popular watch out of the two. But ultimately, in the wider scheme of things, no one gives a shit that it's got a grape dial. No one gives a shit that it was unpopular in the watch world, because people just see it as a Rolex, and that's what it is, a really nice Rolex. So the next one is security, and in today's society, security and expensive watches is quite a hot topic. And for me, I definitely feel less conscious wearing the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 39. I've got to give it to that on the security level. Wearing a two-tone watch in major cities now is almost a big no-no, you would say. People definitely don't want to do it because they're getting their arms chopped off, they're getting mugged. You're seeing it more and more on social media where people are capturing it on camera and someone's just getting the watch ripped off their arm. I can't imagine a worse experience than that. Luckily, they'll probably just grab your arm, take it off, and if you don't fight back, you'll have both of these to wave around at the end of the day, which is ultimately a lot more valuable than a watch. Horrible experience, you'll be scarred for life from it. But yeah, security-wise, it's got to be the OP39. It goes right under the radar, it's comfortable, it's good looking, it's a Rolex, but it doesn't stand out in the negative way that we know that it is a problem nowadays. The next one is image, and what I mean by that is probably, it's more important to us in the watch community. When you look at someone, you clock their watch, where other people might clock their shoes or their outfit or their hair or, the way they look overall. For us watch nerds, you almost judge a person by what watch he's wearing. And if you're wearing a Rolex Datejust, it portrays, especially to outside of the watch community, maybe the wrong image. I don't like wearing it in front of family members. I think it looks a bit, the big I am. I don't like wearing it in front of customers at work. I think it could portray the wrong message. And if I'm going somewhere where I'm a little bit conscious, I will definitely wear the Oyster Perpetual because I'm trying to portray a more down-to-earth image than I am Flash Harry image. And this is, you see someone wearing a Rolex Datejust, you can go two ways. You can think, wow, they look amazing, or you think, is that fake? So image-wise, it's got to actually go almost like a reverse snobbery. It's got to go to the Oyster Perpetual 39. Wearability, massive for if you're conscious of your watches, if you like watches, if you've got an Instagram page, you think about watches way too often. And when you're wearing watches, ideally you want to forget about it and get on with your day. But as a watch addict, a watch geek like myself, I am conscious of my watch. I'm conscious if it rides down or how comfortable it is or if it catches on my cuff, anything like that. So the wearability, 39 to 41 mil, it's not that much difference in all reality. But the 39 mil for me and my wrist size and my wearability is definitely the Oyster Perpetual 39. It's comfortable, it looks the business, it's super comfy all day long. I could almost sleep in it, I really could. Whereas the Datejust, because of the gold, it's a little bit heavier, a little bit more, I won't say cumbersome to wear, it's still super slender, it fits really well. But yeah, the Oyster Perpetual 39, again, it's wearable a lot more. Next one is the clasp. Now, these watches are very, very similar. They've got exactly the same clasps in essence. One is maybe two-tone and polished, where the other one is all brushed. One has got a stamped clasp, whereas one has got an applied logo. Same action, same movement, but ultimately the thing that separates them is the micro adjustment and the easy link system within the Datejust. So I've got to give it to the Datejust on this occasion because no micro adjustment, it's not a deal killer. It's not the end of the world. Whereas once upon a time, if I bought a watch and it didn't have micro adjustment, that would freak me out. But nowadays, it's okay. I do get away with it. I do get a good fit. And because it's a little bit smaller, if it does ride down on the colder days when it's jangling around a little bit, seems to wear a little bit better in that essence. So yeah, that is a good thing, but ultimately with micro adjustment, you can't beat it. Just that 5mm mega difference, and I give it to the Datejust on this occasion. So the next one is the minor details, the little things that you might not automatically pick up unless you look closely at these two watches. And looking at them, they are very, very similar. Now, let's take away the gold, fair enough, and the colour of the dial, fair enough. But the case shape is very, very similar. The text at the top is very, very similar. They've both got an applied crown. Granted, the Datejust is in a gold version, but they've got the applied crowns. The hands, the second hand, they are almost identical. I think the Datejust ones are a little bit bigger. Granted, it's a little bit of a bigger watch. The crowns are identical. The lugs are identical. The tape is identical. The clasp is almost identical. So, take the gold away from the Datejust and you've got pretty much identical watches. The details, I'd have to say, I still don't know what they were trying to do with the grape dial by only putting 3 lume markers. That throws me out. It pisses me off a little bit. And then that red dot on the hour markers. Of these versions of the Oyster Perpetual 39s, the blue dial I think had green markers, like lime green ones, which I think they were trying to be funky, but they never quite worked, didn't these watches ultimately? And I think the silver dial had blue. Yeah, so it never quite worked. And the hour markers, because of the lume pips, they're not quite the same. They're not symmetrical, whereas on the Datejust they are. So I think because of that and because it's got the fluted bezel, I've got to give the little details, like it's got the micro adjustment as well. The hour markers are symmetrical. I've got to give it to the Datejust on this occasion. Now, the next one is comfort. Wearability and comfort, you could argue they're very similar, but again, comfort I have got to give to the Oyster Perpetual 39. It is my most comfortable under the radar watch, but it still feels special because I paid £6,400 for a £4,700 watch that nobody wanted to buy when it was in the shops. It's got weird hour markers, it's got red pips, but it's a Rolex, and Rolex, for me, it does give you that fuzzy feeling, and that's why Rolex is the most popular brand in the world, because people aspire to own a Rolex, and what you've got one, it's a nice feeling. I could wear this watch all day, every day, and that's the only watch. But if I'm really honest, I am conscious that I've got the run-of-the-mill, entry-level, basic Rolex that nobody wanted to buy. And does that play on my mind a little bit? A smidge. I've got to be honest, it does play on my mind a little bit, and if I got rid of the Datejust and I only had this left, I think those feelings would be heightened because I haven't got a better, superior Rolex, which is stupid, I know, but that's just what goes around my head when I am a watch addict. But I've got to give comfort to the Oyster Perpetual. And the last one on my list, you've got to bring it up, and it's the tradability, the sellability, the ability to resell this watch if I wanted to. Now, I bought the Oyster Perpetual 39 in grape specifically, and very consciously knowing that I would have a real hard time selling this watch on, especially with the fact it didn't come with papers. There's no documentation to say how old this watch is, apart from the reputable dealer that I bought it from. They did send documentation to say that it is around a 2017 and it has been regulated by us. And to be fair, I bought it from Charles Fish, and they are a reputable used Rolex or watch salespeople, so that's not too bad. But it's ultimately the most unpopular watch Rolex have ever built, and it comes without papers, which is a big thing when you're buying an expensive watch. So I'll probably have to keep it quite some time before I recoup my money. So tradability, sellability has got to go down to the Rolex Datejust. But even then, Rolex two-tone, they're nowhere near as popular as the sports models, and I might have a hard time selling that. I bought it from Watchmaster, I think they're called. They've got quite a lot of shops in Europe, etc. £10,350. That was about £50 over retail, which is a pretty good deal, to be fair, isn't it? But that shows in the heightened market, especially 6 months ago, there wasn't trading for that much over. Now, when you put your watch collection at Chrono 24, it tells you how much your watch is worth, and it said it was worth about 14,000 straight away within the next couple of months of me buying that watch. Out of curiosity, I went to Chrono 24 and I said, right, I want to sell it. How much will you give me? Bearing in mind they value it at 14, they said £8,000. So if I sell that to a dealer now, I'm going to lose money, which you can't do that at a Rolex, can you? I'm probably the only man in the world that's sold a Rolex and lost money, But yeah, the Datejust does inch it on tradability and resale ability, but still it'll be a hard sell compared to, say, a Submariner or something like that. So at that reckoning, I think I've gone through 10 different things to talk about these two watches, entry level versus luxury watches. Ultimately, there's not that much difference apart from the cost. They're both Rolexes, they're both iconic in their own ways, they're both very comfortable, they're both very good looking, but I've made it 5 all. So you take your pick, guys. Ultimately, people will look at both these watches and think, no, I'd rather sell them both and get something else. Maybe I'll do that in the future, I don't know. But I just wanted to talk about my 2 Rolexes. It's great owning such expensive watches, especially when the Rolex, because you can probably flog it and sell it and get something else and not lose too much money. Anyway, guys, welcome to the new setup. It's not quite perfect, but it's better than what it has been, and I'll see you in the next one.